But I think many people think about aging and science of aging in a sort of moral dichotomy, like either we're helping people or we're earning money. In fact, rapidly aging population makes aging one of the largest earning opportunity of our times. This is already seen from the bottom lines of pharma companies that are earning extraordinary amounts of money from drugs that are working against age-related disease. And there are now multiple estimates suggesting that drugs that would be working against the root causes of aging would be earning insane amount of money, meaning that a company that may own one asset in aging only would probably be more valuable than the largest pharma companies of our days. So my background is actually physics. I came into the field when somebody showed me that guy, which is an example of a mammal that does not age. And for me, and I think a good operational definition of aging is, of course, this exponential acceleration of mortality that you can see for humans, no log scale. I mean, really a crazy exponential line. And as you may know, for lots of mammals, the mortality doesn't grow up with age, which means that in order to find a really strong intervention against aging, I think everyone must ask himself a question, or herself a question. How do we know if we are these guys or that guys, and what kind of technology is required in order to make those guys into that guy? So in mathematical terms, it means that in order to find out a good intervention against aging, we need to know what actually determines which are biological, whatever, physical or chemical factors that are distinguishing that exponent from that exponent. What is the biology of mortality acceleration? What are biological factors that are actually defining the mortality rate doubling time, which is in humans, I'm reminding you, is 8 years. So for that, I would suggest to go to the first principles, and I will show you now a few slides from the work that has just been submitted, so it will be online very soon. I will show you that, in fact, it's totally possible to understand which factors are controlling the mortality acceleration, and once you understand that, you can make drugs against that eventually. So to the first principles. So from first principles, we know that we are machines. And what machines do is that they're taking energy and they convert energy into work. And in biology, the work is the pathway activations. I mean, all those chemical processes that are making us, tick. And then, as you know, no amount of heat can be converted to work with 100% efficiency, which means that there will be always residual heat. And that residual heat will be always attacking our molecular machinery. So the heat is unuseful work, which means that it's chaos, it's fluctuations. And those fluctuations will do what? They will do chemical modifications of the molecules. So in the molecular language, if those lines are DNAs, what our molecular machinery is doing is that we are modifying our DNA all the time. So those are the green points. And those green points are the useful modifications. Those modifications are changing gene expressions, and they are producing the useful work. And as I said, this heat is attacking these DNA molecules in our body in such a way that it produces chaotic stochastic modifications of our DNA. Some of them are mutations, by the way, but not only mutations. And this works not only with DNA, it works with all other molecules. All other molecules are also getting modified. So it's not just DNA methylation or something like that. So obviously, a certain amount of those modifications stick in such a way that they are not removed and they accumulate over time. Which means that as we function, what happens in our body is that certain parts of our biomolecules are experiencing reversible modifications, these green lights, and these things are just reflecting our life histories. So these are responses to stress mostly. And they're reversible, so they're stochastic, chaotic, they're going back and forth, these are just mechanics. And then on top of that, we should have some kind of modifications which are just simply growing up as we age, linearly with age. And obviously, the more red modifications we have, the less lifespan we have to, expected lifespan we have to live. So that's why one of the key characteristics of living machines is this kind of thermodynamic fidelity. This is the quantity that is telling you how many stochastic changes, stochastic modifications you are getting per one useful modification that is reversible per unit of work. So that's how it works. If you go to molecular level data, like DNA methylation, for example, in humans, you can always find a cluster of features that is linear in time. So this is really the accumulated stochastic damage, and then lots of things that are just going slowly up with age, which are just reversible pathway activations. The same happens in mice. If you cluster DNA methylation features in mice, you can always find one linear feature and one exponential feature. Mice are exponential agers. That's why they are living only 2 years. And once again, the linear feature is probably the stochastic damage. So how do we know if this is a stochastic damage or not? So to find out that these sites, DNA methylation sites that are participating in the linear feature are indeed stochastic, what you can do, you can go to single cell methylation data, and for every site you can measure if that site knows about modifications in other sites, right? So correlated features would have high mutual information, and uncorrelated features would have low mutual information. And the bar on the bottom is actually telling you that if you are participating in the linear feature, so this is when you're going to the left, you see that the amount of mutual information is also going down, which means that these are stochastic changes. So once again, what you can see in molecular data, and that's what you could only see from the modern molecular data, like single-cell molecular data, there is a linearly increasing stochastic damage, both in mice and humans and all mammals. You can see it actually in large data sets of aging mammals, like Alta's Mammalian Aging Consortium dataset. You can see that there is always a feature, a cluster of features that is going up linearly. And what's most important for that cluster is that the variance of that stochastic linear feature is also increasing linearly with age. So there is a correlation between the mean and the variance. And for those who is mathematically inclined, that means that this is what is called Poissonian stochastic noise variable. That means that this is the result of uncorrelated events. And this is, by the way, known. So, for example, mutations are uncorrelated stochastic events. And what this data is telling you is that all other age-related changes, not only mutations, but also epimutations and also other macromolecule modifications, are uncorrelated stochastic events. And the problem with this is that if they are uncorrelated stochastic events, it means that you cannot actually reverse them. I mean, if in one cell and in the other cell and in the other cell, they happen in an uncorrelated manner, it means that you cannot come with an intervention that would fix it in one cell and in the other cell and in the other cell, which means that most probably this linear damage accumulation is not realistically reversible. And this is exactly what's going on in the experiment. So for example, if you go to mice and you measure these reversible and irreversible features in response to anti-aging interventions, you find that the reversible features respond to anti-aging interventions. So here I have an example of parabiosis. So you have here 3 groups. So one of them are the young mice, right? So their kind of biological age is smaller than the biological age in the older mice. And then the third cohort is the cohort of older mice that was subjected to parabiosis, the blood transfusion that actually rejuvenates them. And you can see that the reversible features are going down. And then on the right, you have the same animals, but now 2 months after the intervention, and you can see that the effect sticks, right? So you can actually rejuvenate mice. But if you look at the stochastic features that are contributing to this kind of linear aging signature, you can see that the young animals are still younger than the old animals, but parabiosis doesn't do a thing to the stochastic damage accumulation. So this is actually a nasty manifestation of the second law of thermodynamics in respect to aging, that tells you that you cannot realistically revert aging signature. You can stop it, but you cannot revert it. So what you can do then, I mean, if you cannot revert it and you still want to live long, and you know that there are mammals that live long, so how do they do this? So to answer this question, you have to look at the fluctuations. And fluctuations in mechanical or biological systems should be described with some kind of thermodynamics. And thermodynamics is telling you that if your system is very strongly interacting, then the fluctuations should be correlated as well. So what you can see here is that we measured fluctuations in the key pathways from DNA methylation, and you can see that the fluctuations are controlled by one parameter. So one parameter changes on the horizontal axis, and all of them are changed together. And this parameter in physics is called effective temperature. So the more is the effective temperature, the more are the fluctuations in all important pathways. And the most interesting thing is that if you now group animals according to their noise, right, the fluctuations are the biological noise, you can see that the animals that have different levels of biological noise are actually aging at different rates. So this is the logarithm of mortality versus age for dogs, and these are the data from our collaborators. And you can actually see that the animals who have more noise have more initial mortality and kind of small inclination, so long mortality rate doubling time, small aging acceleration. And the animals, the blue animals that have the less noise, the animals that are able to control their physiology best, have low initial mortality and apparently higher aging acceleration, but they live longer. So if you look at their survival curves, you can see that what the temperature is doing is that, I mean, if there were no fluctuations, animals would be dying in the same day. So the difference in lifespan is actually due to fluctuations. And you can see that the animals that have more fluctuations, the rats, are starting dying earlier. So what actually temperature is doing, what the biological noise is doing in the aging systems is that if you have less biological noise, you have more squared survival curve. So the temperature is solely responsible for squaring of the survival curve. You can see it in the same way. So what temperature is doing, the temperature explains the difference between the average and the maximum lifespan. So the temperature doesn't change. On the left, there is the ratio of the maximum lifespan to the average lifespan. It's a function of temperature. So the more temperature, the more noise you have in the system, the more is the difference. The temperature is responsible for the squaring of the curve. And at the same time, the temperature does not affect the rate of aging. So with this, I would try to conclude now quickly is that from the data and from this kind of very simple mechanical, almost mechanical considerations, you can find that there are essentially 3 ways to extend human lifespan. What I would call level 1 anti-aging drug is a drug that works against hallmarks of aging, any hallmark of aging you like. So these drugs work very well in mice. They rejuvenate mice, but they wouldn't do much to humans because in humans, hallmarks of aging are not correlated. They're reversible, they're related to diseases. And level 1 drugs are actually drugs against human diseases. Of course, if you cure diabetes, you can extend life by 10 years, but that's most that you can achieve. The level 2 drug would affect not individual hallmarks of aging, not the level of any specific thing, not a clock, but would affect fluctuations of biological age. And if you're able to do such a drug, that drug will bring human lifespan to the maximum human lifespan, which is about 120 years old. So that will be a huge effect. But unfortunately, this kind of a drug would not intercept the functional decline in humans. So we will be living long, but not very well at the end of life. And then there should be a level 3 drug, the drug that actually affects the rate of aging, the rate of the damage accumulation. And I would say that there are almost no attempts at this time to make such a drug, and that's what we're kind of calling for trying. So once again, you can make 80 years old average lifespan to 90 years if you work against, for example, metabolic disorder, and that's why many anti-aging companies are now pivoting to metabolic diseases. You can do 120 if you reduce the biological noise. And there is yet unknown biology and physics that is controlling the actual rate of the entropy production, the damage accumulation, which is the only meaningful way to extend human lifespan well beyond 120 years, and which I believe in the coming years will be the focus of lots of research. Fortunately, level 1 drugs are the gateway drugs for pharma, because pharma now understands that aging is a huge problem, and these people are actually in licensing now drugs from companies that are working well against hallmarks of aging because these are good drugs against age-related diseases. We have tried some, and we have very interesting business story to report maybe in the beginning of the next year, telling you that actually Big Pharma is super interested, and they will be developing such drugs. But what needs to be done is the developing of the drugs that will affect human lifespan by a lot more, and that's what our company is doing as quick as we can. So I would like to conclude with this, that these are our collaborators. We work with the National University of Singapore, with Jan Gruber and with Brian Kennedy and other people. And obviously we're looking for investment. And then we have Alex Cadet, who is here, stand up, who is here all the time. So please talk to us, because this is probably one of the most aggressive projects in terms of the expected effect size. So we're expecting your help.
Did you ever look at inside the same animal at different tissues, in particular the germline?
Yes, of course. So, yeah, first of all, we have this dogs cohort, which is very interesting. So we have 60 dogs, which we can which were followed longitudinally. So that's why we know a lot about them. And also we work with biobanks, and in biobanks, in UK biobanks, there is 500,000 people. So what we're trying to do is that we look at extreme differences in lifespan, like in all mammals. to find factors, and then we try if they also regulate lifespan within a specific species, like dogs and humans. And of course, those are the most interesting as a possible avenue for drug development.
But what about different tissues?
Yeah, so for the different tissues, great question. So I'm not a biologist by training, but the people who helped me to learn a little bit always produce this interesting argument. So, for example, I don't like when people are saying that tissues age at a different rate. Well, if you have a disease, it's true, but if there are no diseases, it's not true for the following reason. That assume that there would be one tissue that would be aging faster than all the other tissues. Then, for natural selection, there would be no forces that would make other tissues more robust than that one. So which means that the natural selection would actually synchronize the rate of aging in all tissues.
Except the germline.
Except the germline, yes.
So just a quick question, systems levels. You can have either a plastic response to an intervention, or you can have an elastic.
Mm-hmm.
And in aging, there's all those hormetic effects that suggest elastic response of the system.
Mm-hmm.
The stochastic level of growth, to me, looks more like a system that will be responding plastically to
Exactly.
any intervention. So how do you integrate those things? And like people get excited about that. Is it likely to work? Is it likely to have some effects?
Is it likely to what?
Hormetics, all those hormetics things. And
Yeah, look, the empirical way to separate the two, I like this analogy, elastic and inelastic, right? So we have lots of evidence that many things are elastic, especially in humans, for example. We can quit smoking, and that would be an elastic response. We also see that, for example, for humans, there is less data like this, but if you take typical interventions that work in kind of inelastic way in mice, work in elastic way in dogs, and most probably in humans as well. So the way to understand or integrate this to my taste is the following. We are evolutionary, very sophisticated animals. Technically, we have ways to repair most of the errors. Not all, but I mean, most of them. We're not limited by those which we cannot repair. The problem is that this is not only a question about ability to repair, but also in principle, but also ability in a given moment of time. So sometimes, and I don't show these slides, you can actually see that if you look at the kinetics of events that contribute to damage, it looks like those are extreme events, when certain things that normally work together, for some reason, fail at the same time, and you produce a very nasty error. Because to undo that error, you have to undo this funny combination of things. It's like when airplanes crash, no single cause of the crash is not deadly, but when there are 6 of them at the same time, you crash. So what happens, I think, with aging is that we have systems, multiple redundant systems, we see evidence from that fail together in a very, uncommon type of event. And that's why it becomes plastic, because to recreate that event is almost impossible. And the patterns of those events are different in different tissues and different cells, which means that to repair them, you will have to unpack your DNA, stop whatever you're doing, unpack your DNA, collect all the things that are required. So it's not like it's impossible in principle. I mean, in principle, yes. I mean, if you just want to do that, you will do it. But in reality, you don't have the level of control that is required to do the diagnostics and treatment. So that's why my judgment is that second law is a very bad thing when it shows up, and it does. And ugly face shows the ugly face of second law, which technically means that if we're talking about technologies that would be available in 10 years, we should not rely on their ability to repair. We should rely on our ability to prevent. This is the only way. I mean, those mammals know how to do that, so we can learn from them. If I responded. Plastic, elastic is a very good analogy to that.
All right, give it up for Peter.